welcome back to NatChat, the Natilik podcast. My name is Rob Thorne. Today, we're talking about one of the most important parts of our own business, our managed service. In this new type of show, we take a look behind the scenes of Natilik to give listeners an insight into how we build our solutions and services for our clients. In our first look behind the scenes, we're speaking with two of our service delivery and transition managers to get an insight into how we work side by side with our clients to support, maintain, and ensure that their infrastructure continues to deliver. We discuss the ins and outs of providing service excellence, talk about some of the examples where we've seen a real difference, and dig deeper into how we continue to evolve the service that we offer to our clients. It's Thursday, February 11th, and this is the Natilik podcast. Delighted to welcome to the Natilik podcast, Emma Simpkin, Service Transition Manager at Natilik. Do you prefer, I don't know, whether you prefer Service Transition or Service Transition and Delivery Manager?
It's both at the moment, Rob, but whichever one you would like to use for the purposes of the podcast, because we've got Joe filling in the other half today.
Hey, yeah, I like it. So welcome aboard. And yeah, as you mentioned, Joe Smart, Service Delivery Manager. How are you doing, my man?
Yeah, very well, thank you. How are you after the big Liverpool loss at the weekend?
Great. It's turning into like a bit of a tradition of our podcast. I don't know. I mean, our non-football loving listeners will probably resent the fact that we do, but it's about time that I got a bit of a kick in. Anyway, so fair enough, Joe. Fair enough. I will remember that and be sure to throw you under the bus later on as a thank you for it. So, guys, tell the listeners a little bit about what you guys do, just to start off with, because this is a bit of a different podcast. This is the first time that we've really focused on something that we do with our clients every day. So the purpose of this show really is to try and give a bit of an insight into one of the processes, one of the I'd say maybe some of the unsung heroes, should we say, of the Natilik team. So Emma, would you like to start?
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. Thank you. So my role at Natilik, as you've kind of very articulately put, is a service transition / delivery manager. So a bit of a hybrid role there. And I've been with Natilik for just over three years now, really responsible for everything operational for my client subset.
Nice. Yeah, I was just looking at my tenure at Natilik and realised I'm coming up to my 4 years as well. And it's actually quite scary how much the last year just feels like it's kind of just disappeared almost, right? We're nearly 12 months into this thing. So, yeah, it's kind of scary. And Joe, you're obviously a very similar role, but slightly different in terms of your engagement with clients, right?
Yeah, so I'm a service delivery manager at Natilik, so similar to Em, just without the transition in my title. I'm basically responsible for the operational aspects of the client, or the client and Natilik relationship. So work alongside the account director, and we're basically, I don't know if you've ever seen, but there's a GIF that goes around of a person is juggling plates and also fire at the same time. He's got a plate on his head, each hand fire. I suppose that's us. That's what we do on a day-to-day basis, isn't it, Em?
I love that analogy. I think really it's a little bit of that, a little bit of a juggler in a circus, and also almost acting as a translator sometimes. So you translate a lot for impact in our role, whether that's between the business and the engineers or the techies, and sometimes between the vendor and the client. There's a lot of juggling plates and translating.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of the industry that we're in, right? I mean, there's a lot of jargon. We throw around loads of little acronyms all the time: SDMs, PMs, AMs, all of that kind of stuff. But it's probably also worth mentioning that I used to work with you guys quite closely in my previous life, 4 or 5 months ago, when I used to work in the sales facility as well. So for better or for worse, right?
How much do you miss us? That's the question.
A lot. I do miss working with you guys. Maybe some of the other bits around it, maybe less so much, but won't bore the listeners with the details. So you kind of got into it a little bit there, actually, just in terms of the service element of our managed service, and we pride ourselves on how we deliver our managed service, right? So 365 days a year, 24/7. But I think it'd be good to give our clients a high-level overview of, again, just maybe a little bit on our managed service portfolio, and maybe a little bit more into the insights of what an SDM does, and what it's like to work in our managed service part of the business. I've kind of thrown you in under the bus a little bit there, as that's sort of combining two of the questions that I had for you guys. But would you be okay to just, again, talk through how that works? What is an SDM, a service delivery manager? Again, whoever wants to take that first.
Yeah, of course, I can quickly butt in. Sorry, Em, I was just unmuted before you did. I suppose, yeah, high level in a way. If you want to put yourself in the shoes of the client, ultimately all that they want from their support guys is they just want someone to voice what they're saying, someone to listen, someone to be there to, if it's good, well, the good, the bad, and the ugly, I suppose, as they say. So it's just being able to articulate whatever the client wants to get, or the end goal they'd like to get to, or just the level of service that they sort of expect and they come to expect. That in a way, in a nutshell, in a high level, I suppose, is what we are. What do you anything to add on that, Em?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're looking at what a service delivery manager does, we can kind of run through everything in terms of, service management. So you're talking
Okay.
asset management, escalation problem, major incident, vendor, partner, CSI, all those funky acronyms and TLAs that the tech industry is so well known for. But then if you want to break it down in terms of what do we actually do day to day, I kind of like to think of an orchestra. So you've got all of these different instruments, all of these incredible specialists working in different areas of the business or within different areas of the service. And as an SDM, your focus is on keeping everyone in time and together. So we maintain the harmony, so to speak, in a client service.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it, actually, because, and it's funny that you worded it that way, because I think the beginning part of that, where you're naming all the things that you do, the kind of, and apologies, probably want for a better phrase, the kind of the ugly things that people don't want to bother about, right? No one wants to care about asset management or serial numbers and things like that. They just kind of want it to go away, right?
Yeah, and you want it to work. So really, our focus is on making it work by keeping all of those elements in shape. And as Joe spoke around, a lot of that will be focused, especially within Natilik, around our NOC and our brilliant 24/7 global support operations. But there's so many other elements behind that too: your contracts, your assets, your renewals. My goodness, we could talk all day about the pain of having to go through different contract renewals, and just ensuring that that actually works for a client. So we're right sizing whatever they have today and making sure that it's what they want for the future.
Yeah. More than anything, especially coming from a sales role, I know that one of the key headaches that my clients used to come to me with were we have so many contracts in so many different places for so many different dates that we either can't keep on top of it, or we don't want to keep on top of it, or we want someone else to keep on top of it. So yeah, it's you guys are the unsung heroes, or one of the unsung heroes in the business. I can definitely vouch for that. So, especially having worked as a support engineer in the first 2 or 3 years in my career in the industry as well, I know that fixing when your job is fixing things that are broken, people seldom pick up the phone just to say hello and how much of a good job you're doing. Right? It's usually this is broke, get it fixed, or this is missing, or whatever. So, fair play. Um, so to shift gears a little bit, I mean, looking back at sort of working with clients and how we kind of refine that managed service. I mean, it's safe to say it's different for literally every single client, right? There is no two managed services that look the same, or at least in my experience, it's not. Um, what do we do then from a perspective of making sure that, again, that's the right fit all the time? Because obviously our clients' needs are changing more so as of late than ever. How do you guys actually keep on top and make sure that we're actually delivering the outcomes again and again that are specific to the client's needs?
I suppose a better way to put it, without having to use the jargon which you mentioned, we call it's almost a capture to understand what the client what the client would like to achieve. So you find out their goals of where they'd like to get to, and then we obviously help them get to those goals. As cliche as it sounds, as Natilik's obviously our slogan, our whole brand is "Together we can achieve amazing," isn't it? So we obviously, what we'd like to do is we'd understand exactly what it is that the client wants to get to, and then we just help them get there. So, I mean, the SDM, especially behind the scenes, they do all of the, like you say, the nitty and gritty stuff, the stuff that people don't really want to. We don't not people don't wouldn't like to. Well, when I say people, clients wouldn't like to sit down and say, yeah, let's go through this asset list. This is good fun. Like, that's not something people like to spend their time on. But that's the thing that we're there to do for them. So we take that element away from them, I suppose. And as Em mentioned, yeah, the best way to describe that, the whole the conductor of the orchestra, that's what we do. So we're there, we find out, we do this capture, we sort of go through the managed services with them, we really off the sort of different elements that we can do. Obviously, everything comes at whether it's important to them, whether it's a priority or whether it's not, and then obviously we work that out. And M sits closer to that, I suppose, in the transition world of things. So you'll probably give a better analogy of what I do, Em, but I suppose from my point of view, that's where I see it.
Absolutely right there, Joe. I think that when we're kind of talking around how do we actually take the feedback that we're hearing day in, day out and turn it into something that's tangible for a client to consume and see value in, it's about almost that continual service improvement or program that you might run with a client. So if they have a major incident and for some whatever reason, this actually happened to me the other day, so I'm going to use this example. The one of the nodes on a server just kept going into like a hung state. We didn't know why. It just kept doing it every 3 or 4 hours or so. You put in place a series of actions and you take steps following that to uncover the why, follow up and understand if there's anything corrective that we can do. And really, we're quite passionate about that process, so we do it as a wider business. So taking the feedback that we get from the service design phase or the questions we might see come up in service transition, and then bring all of that feedback back so that for the next kind of organization going through the same set of challenges. And it is worth pointing out here that sometimes you're on the bleeding edge of tech. So there are going to be challenges and there are going to be things to work out. We can ensure that they don't go through any of those same pain points. So it's really about taking everything that you've learnt today and in the past and then just applying it up front, or at least giving the client the opportunity to apply that up front so they don't have to risk downtime. And at the end of the day, a lot of what we're doing is around preventing downtime, preventing any issue for a business so that they don't have to go through that experience. I mean, we all know that in our world today, downtime and delays mean, a negative customer experience. And most companies would say at least most IT infrastructure managers and heads of department would say that, customer experience is one of their top 3 priorities.
I think you hit the nail on the head there as well. I mean, in terms of like as Natilik, we're all about the design, transition, and manage stages, aren't we? So it's all about, as you mentioned there, Rob, we capture it. We did a design phase, we then move into the transition phase, and then we move into the manage phase. And that's the journey we take you on in terms of the managed service at Natilik, and that's the sort of the run book, if you will, as to how we get to our clients' goals.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I've seen the benefits of it in real life, right? I mean, I know me and Emma used to work side by side on site with one of our clients in Canary Wharf. So and it worked out really, really well. When you can actually see and understand how the mechanics of a business works behind the scenes, not just sort of playing it back once a year, but doing it on a regular basis, it really helps. So what's your experience been in 2020 in terms of the shift in people working and their approach to managed service? I mean, like I said, we're coming up to 12 months of being in this now. It's a question that I pretty much ask all of our guests, and it's interesting just to see the difference in responses. Some people are business as usual, quite easy to transition over. It was quite easy. Did you see anything change, or have you seen any sort of change in attitudes and just sort of the typical way that people are approaching the way that they maintain and manage their infrastructure?
Absolutely. I think we talk around what's it like to work in the managed service side of the business or part of a business. It's high pressure but rewarding. And 2020, even 2021, you could argue for those of us in the UK or in the US, and is no less of that. So it was incredibly high pressure, particularly because a lot of our organisations, some were very well prepared for it and others weren't. And it was really one of those moments in time where you kind of realise that the importance of being prepared and having BCM plans in place, because you can't afford downtime. You can't afford to not be connected with your workforce. So we took a lot of clients on that journey. Some of them were further ahead in it, and others, as you've said, Rob, when the pandemic started to hit. And it was really interesting to see kind of that in a unique position where you're acting into the extension of a client's IT team or tech services team there, how that actually worked out within their organizations. We had some people who were able to move to completely new systems very quickly because they had things in place to support that within their workforce, and others who are still working out the kinks now about a year on.
Yeah, I'd say the same. I think in terms of, I mean, if you were to spin it and say how have we coped as service delivery managers working for Natilik, I think Natilik hit the ground running in terms of the minute we needed to work from home, we could do that, and that's what we wanted to take to our clients, and that's what we wanted to say. Look, we are business as usual. We know that some of you guys may not be, but we are there. We're still here. No matter what happens, you guys can still contact us. And I suppose that's obviously then shows the importance of relationships that service delivery managers then have to then understand. You've then got that understanding. You can, like, there's some clients where you can jump on the phone and say, what's going on? Like, are you guys business as usual? Like, how can we help in any way? And I think that's the service delivery manager of the role is in terms of the managed service has been pivotal in terms of understanding where our clients are currently at in, as you mentioned them, not just 2020 but 2021 as well, to basically just be there throughout and offer that whole sort of tailor managed service that we always do, and just make sure that they're getting that level of support that they expect from us all of the time.
Exactly, because no matter what organizational change you've been undergoing, support, and particularly our world, because we sit within that managed service realm of Natilik, has continued business as usual. If anything, it's ramped up because people are now putting a lot more focus on support. You know that you can't afford to have issues, you can't afford to take some of the risks that you may have gotten away with if you had an entirely on-site workforce. And for lots of organizations, that was completely pivotal.
Yeah, it's one of those rare occasions where I think everyone was almost learning how to do something for the first time together, which is maybe even once in a generation. I don't know. I mean, we'll see. Hopefully, hopefully we don't go through anything like this again. But yeah, I know I've referred to it a few times actually in a few other shows that we've had. But it was interesting. I think Mike put it really well. Mike Danson, our CEO, on the podcast that I did with him, where he said, IT almost had a responsibility to try and support and help our clients through it. And again, I think you guys were probably a big part of that, being on the front lines with our clients in trying to help them transition over into again this just new way of working, right? So and that, well, using the word transition, I suppose that's quite a fitting segue into the next section, where I wanted to ask you guys about maybe taking a step back a little bit more, because I know, Emma, one of your responsibilities is service transition. I think that's one of the sort of the differences between yours and Joe's day-to-day role. Might be a bit of an alien concept to some of our clients and listeners. So can you talk me through, again, what does that do? Can you paint a picture as to sort of why we've been getting a lot of love from clients around this, sort of as of late? Certainly, I know there's some high profile projects that have certainly benefited from it. So would you be able to talk a little bit about that for us?
So as Joe said earlier, we talk a lot around that process from design to transition to operation or go live. Depends what term you want to use and what section of the industry you are in. But for Natilik, service transition is really around ensuring that all of the great work we've done in service design or the upfront phase where we're getting to know each other, asking all the questions, is followed through. So if you're on a transformational project, that could be almost becoming part of like the service eyes in a team. So I worked over one in 2020. It's funny that we were mentioning COVID and the pandemic earlier, where that was a massive challenge for them. I mean, it was a massive project team building a network and security out for a state-of-the-art warehouse the size of 7 Premier League football pitches. The internal team were slammed. There was a lot of work having to be put on people, and obviously what we didn't know at that point really hit the building timelines as well as the tech timelines, but we were up against it and we all had to meet a certain deadline. However, we also know, and where service transition comes into play within that project world, when you're building a completely new technology service out, is that you have to ask the questions up front and you have to define things up front. Otherwise, you'll get to day one, service will be activated, everything's switched on, and you won't have a plan for what happens when you need to make a change. There won't be a plan around how regularly you're upgrading your firmware. Things like lifecycle management, knowledge management, change management, these kind of sound as if they're all dry and cut processes, but they're very, very living things, especially in our world today. Our systems now are built to change, not to last. And I mean, you only need to look at the fact that HMRC is taking up 80% of their IT budget on maintaining legacy systems to know that this can actually really quickly eat into your business. The other kind of example is that service validation. So part of service transition is encouraging service validation. Everyone will remember, unfortunately, TSB's big problem in April 2018 when they went live on a new system that had only been tested in one really isolated occurrence. So they didn't actually test any of their new systems in a whole data center. So when they had massive downtime, and then following on from that, I think it was around 370 million worth of fines from the government, there wasn't much of a defense to it because they hadn't thought through the process around that and done service validation. So at a high level, service transition is really just around ensuring that we get the outcomes you need from a service, check that you've got easy to follow process and procedures, or that there's even any in place, and ultimately all but the goal of realizing the value in your investment, decreasing your delays and downtime, because we know that interruptions without planning ends up having a negative customer experience, and you're not going to be able to do business, which is the whole focus of working with a partner like Natilik, because we're focused on the overall client outcome.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose as you mentioned there, Em, in terms of the transitional phases, you've got as you talk about the design, the transition, the manage phase. I suppose I sit at the end of that chain where you see from the design. So obviously you sit down with a client as we talk about this capture. I mean, we call it a managed services requirements capture, which is a bit of a spiel itself. So if you hear MSRC, the jargon thrown in, that's what we're talking about. for any of the listeners that don't know what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about there. But we do that. We sit down. We do this capture. Then obviously, like Em says, you've got the transitional phase of things where you just want it. You want the transition from doing any sort of project into the support world of Natilik to be seamless. You want that there to. A happy client is what we want at the end of the day. Our MD in the commercial business in Natilik is he loves it. He loves it when we talk about happy clients. We just want our clients to be happy with the service that we offer. What we say we're going to deliver, we do deliver, and to then obviously go through the transitional phase into the managed phase, where obviously that's the end that I sit at. To have a transitional SDM in there is pivotal, I think, because it just means it's seamless. It just gets handed over. There's no, we haven't dealt with this section, or we need to do. There's no sort of, as Em says, disruption service. That's not what you want. You just want your client to enter in at the project phase, move into the managed phase, and just say, wow, that was a seamless process. That's how it should be. And hats off to Natilik, because I've never had that before. Because I'm not sure that many partners do that. I may be being biased because I work for Natilik, but that's something that we pride ourselves on.
There are no other partners, Joe. There are no
Definitely.
other partners. We are the only one. So.
Exactly.
And when you think around that's something that's often very underrated. So when you talk around the Natilik service transition, we ensure that we do a full welcome committee almost into our remote technical support team. So from day one, you would know exactly how to contact us, how to raise a change, where to find all of your asset schedule and service information, fully understand the SLAs, KPIs, and service level targets that you're entitled to. And more than that, just know that there is a full client virtual team around you. So there's a lot of elements involved in the process, but the reason why we've gotten so much love from it is because it makes things really simple to understand. And sometimes it really prompts people internally to ask why, because often you can find that there's a gap and it's not out of anything other than it's just been historic and left over. So by asking why, you really get to the heart of the matter for the client, for them to be able to take that internally as well.
Yeah,
I think it's that personal touch as well, isn't it? Every client likes to have that sort of that feeling of that love, I suppose, in a way. I mean, some clients may listen and say, "Oh, hang on a minute," but in terms of the sort of wow, Natilik have really thought about this is how it starts. This is how we're transitioning in to get to our end goal, and you get to the end, and there you go. There's your global. Or what should I say, your global support that you've been looking for, or the end goal of your project. It's there, but we've been sort of handheld through the whole process, and there's no, I don't know what's going on here. It's you understand what's going on at every single part of the managed services journey, as you will, because it is a journey from the design to the transition to the managed. That's a journey we take you on.
And I think when we look at it, as we were talking around earlier, some of the nitty gritty stuff that no one really likes to do, it is really easy to put off. We had another client who went through service transition, an international financial services client. Actually, they've got over 25 offices, and they signed on with us in 2019 to a collab project. So there was sort of an offhand mention during those first conversations that they really hated contract management. Unfortunately, the contracts were a little bit all over the place because they'd moved partners due to a disappointing service, and they just wanted a bit of assistance with cleaning that up. Yeah, so they moved on from that original project with us, from the work we were able to do in helping them clean those services up and make recommendations, to now having one renewal every 3 years, single consolidated contracts for each group of architecture, and full control and visibility. And to them, that's transformational.
Always. Yeah. Again, it's taking away that pain, isn't it? And I think that's probably something that's demonstrated in this new era where we're constantly asking clients for feedback and constantly getting solid feedback. And again, if it's not good, we'll listen to it and we'll make it better. So, and you guys are a huge part of that. So that's great, guys. Thank you very much for your time. Again, that's just an insight into one part of our managed service. The plan is to go around and speak to, again, everyone that makes the Natilik machine sing. But for now, Joe, Emma, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks very much, Rob, for having us on.
Thanks for having us, Rob. Hopefully Liverpool see you better in the future.
Yeah, that won't make it through to the final show, unfortunately, Joe. Thanks for listening to NatChat, the Natilik podcast. Please subscribe to the Natilik podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever you get your podcasts, and leave us a review while you're there. It really helps us improve and grow the show. Please note that opinions expressed on the Natilik podcast are those of the hosts or our guests, not the organisations that they represent. You can find more information on Natilik on our website, that's natilik.com. You can also find us on social media. On Twitter, we're at Natilik Group, as well as Facebook and LinkedIn. Our theme music was provided by Dan Short, who you can find at Danzer, that's DANZR, on music streaming services. This is Rob Thor, and thanks again for listening.